What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with what's next for Joaquin Buckley after UFC 307 win. Joaquin Buckley did not have a walk in the park like he predicted he would against Stephen Thompson, but the rising welterweight has almost certainly become a top 10 ranked welterweight after taking out Wonderboy. Buckley looked to take Thompson down repeatedly from the get-go, and while he did score some takedowns, he was never able to put his top game to work. Although Thompson stung and cut Buckley with some nice counter strikes, the powerful welterweight never let up. Eventually, he put Wonderboy down with the booming right hook in round 3. After the win, Buckley called for a fight with former welterweight champion Kamaru Usman. Could he get it? Based on the rankings, that seems somewhat unlikely. Heading into UFC 307, Thompson was ranked number 9 and Buckley was number 11. Kamaru, meanwhile, is ranked number 2. So even though Buckley has won 5 straight now, it wouldn't be shocking if Usman looked for fights with, say, Jack Della Maddalena or Sean Brady, given it would be pretty surprising if Buckley jumped all the way up into the top 5. But what do you think? Could we see Buckley and Usman throw hands next? And if not, which top 10 ranked welterweight would you like to see him battle? Joaquin Buckley doubled down on his Kamaru Usman call-out after UFC 307 during his post-fight press conference.
Former champion, man, me being 5-0 in the welterweight division right now, me really kind of putting on the tier. I really feel like at the end of the day, Usman, being a former champion, kind of will prove and submit my name that, I should fight for a title next. I think I can knock out Usman. Yep, immediately.
Wonderboy posted a video on social media following his loss with the caption, "Not much to say other than I sincerely appreciate all of the love and support I felt from fans tonight and always. The love you've shown me really fills my heart. The roar of the crowd as I walked out the cage and my name was announced is something I'll cherish forever. I'm sorry I didn't get it done tonight. Much love to you all and much love to Salt Lake City." With the following video,
I just got back to the hotel, don't even know how I got here. But again, I get knocked out by an overhand. Once by Pettis, either on the cage or off the cage. It is what it is. I want to say thank you to all of my fans. You guys really showed out for me as I walked out there. You guys have shown me so much support over the years, and I really do appreciate it. And I love you.
Conor McGregor reacted to Wonderboy's video by saying, "My brother Steven, stand your ground. You are more accurate, faster, more skilled, faster eye. Stand your ground and fire. Skipping back for what? What are we skipping back for? Get them hurt first. Then you can skip and dance around. But hurt them first. Stand and fire missiles. You have an incredible array. Stand your ground and trust yourself. Rest up, brother. Unlucky in there." After the main event, Kevin Holland told Joaquin Buckley that he will call him an OG from now on and squash the beef. Watch this.
Yeah. I talk a lot of I know I do too. I can't call you son no more. Anything I gotta call you mother be an OG now. Oh, let me record that so when I'm dead fucking serious. I'm dead serious. Go ahead, I officially can't call Buckley son no more. If anything, I gotta call this man an OG. He's a veteran of the sport and he's showing everybody how you supposed to be a real mixed martial artist. Good. No problem. Good job. Can't knock anybody when they do it.
Justin Gaethje talks about his next UFC fight. It remains to be seen when and who Justin Gaethje will fight next, but after being dusted by Max Holloway in one of the greatest knockouts the Galaxy has ever seen, it looks like he's begun planning for his octagon return. As noted, Gaethje has not fought since he was KO'd by Holloway in electrifying fashion at UFC 300. Following the jaw-dropping defeat, Gaethje reported he was going to take some time off before he fought again. Well, more recently, Gaethje spoke with the Schmo. When asked about a timeline for his return, the former BMF champ said March would be ideal. Then, when asked about who he would like to face, the Highlight Reel Factory acknowledged there's interest in a rubber match with Dustin Poirier. It could be anybody, it could be me, it could be anybody. He's a world-class fighter at the highest level, so anytime he fights, he's spectacular alone. Obviously, we fought twice, so it makes sense, but I have no idea what's gonna happen.
Do you need to feel satisfied for your career to have that trilogy fight with him?
No, I don't. No. Well, he knocked me out, I knocked him out. I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm sure that it's a little bit more bitter for him since I was the last one to win, but it doesn't matter.
Now, if you need a refresher, Poirier and Gaethje fought for the first time way back in 2018, and the Diamond finished the fight in round 4. In their most recent outing in July 2023, however, Gaethje avenged the defeat with a head kick knockout. So given what each man has accomplished to date and because of their fighting styles, you'd think a third fight would generate a lot of interest. But what do you think? Do you want to see Gaethje and Poirier run it back for a third time? And do you think the UFC will be on board with this? Kevin Holland vs. Roman Dolidze recap. Roman Dolidze scored a pivotal victory at UFC 307, but the middleweight did so under pretty unfortunate circumstances. Early on into his bout with Kevin Holland, the latter was light on his feet and was clearly the faster of the two. To To Dolidze's credit, he opted to take the fight down and was able to do so with a nicely timed takedown. Moments later, as Holland looked to roll for an armbar, it became clear the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt had incurred some sort of injury. That spelled the beginning of the end, as Dolidze poured down punches from above. Although Holland was able to make it through the round, his corner realized he was far from 100% and called the fight. So what's next for Dolidze, who was coming off a win over light heavyweight contender Anthony Smith? That's a good question, as Holland is not a top 15 ranked middleweight. Heading into UFC 307, Dolidze was ranked number 10 in the division, but it isn't clear if this win will move him into the top 10. All that aside, it was still an important victory for Dolidze, who prior to his win over Smith was coming off consecutive losses to Marvin Vettori and Nasruddin Imavov. Belal Muhammad warns Ilia Topuria about Islam Makhachev comments. Recently, Ilia Topuria raised eyebrows after making some bold statements on how he thinks a fight with Islam Makhachev would go, and Belal Muhammad has warned the featherweight champ to dial it back. During a recent online Q&A, the featherweight champion said he'd be down to fight Makhachev. Not only that, Topuria said the fight would need to be in the cage and not in the street, so he wouldn't have to pay the lightweight champ's medical bills. Well, in a subsequent interview with Helen Yee, Muhammad was asked about Topuria's comments, and the welterweight champion proceeded to issue this crystal clear warning to the rising star. Be careful what you wish for, right? If you're Ilia, you got a lot of guys in your division you still have to fight. Ilia's getting to that point where you're undefeated. You're getting a lot of hype, so now you're starting to call out and play that game of trying to be the next Conor McGregor, but don't mess with Islam. Like they said, it's different there in Dagestan. If you want a street fight, they'll street fight. Islam doesn't care about, oh, let's get paid for it. He sees you, you disrespect him, he's gonna show you what disrespect means from Dagestan. It's not surprising that Belal issued this warning, as he spent time training with Makhachev and Team Nurmagomedov. But as he alluded to, it seems like quite a few chips need to fall into place before an octagon bout between Topuria and Makhachev is a possibility. Topuria has yet to defend the featherweight title, and before he can do that, he needs to get by the legendary Max Holloway at UFC 308. If Topuria does defeat Blessed, the consensus is the UFC will look at having him face Alexander Volkanovski again. After all, Volk held the featherweight crown for over 3 years before he was put away by Topuria this past April. Makhachev, meanwhile, is expected to rematch Arman Tsarukyan in early 2025. Okay, up next, Sean Strickland breaks silence on bad news. Dricus du Plessis is reporting that the UFC has informed him he'll be defending the middleweight title Down Under in February, and Sean Strickland isn't happy about the news. Strickland has been waiting on the sidelines for his chance to rematch du Plessis, who ended his reign as the middleweight champion this past January. Ever since Strickland lost that fight, he's campaigned for a rematch, and after he defeated Paulo Costa in June, he proclaimed he wasn't going to take a fight unless it was a title shot. Well, following DDP's win over Israel Adesanya in August, he told Submission Radio that the plan is to have him fight once again in Australia this coming February. That prompted Strickland to respond with this comment via social media. UFC event planning. I have a great idea. Let's send Sean to go fight for a championship in a foreign country where the government absolutely hates him. UFC, are you effing with me, or are you trying to tell me you want me to spread freedom? I wonder at times. The fact that the UFC is looking at having another middleweight title fight in Australia has turned heads, since that nation's Robert Whittaker is booked to fight Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 308 later this month. Many people have questioned and argued that if Whittaker wins that fight, he should be next for Dricus du Plessis. Case in point, while talking to the Schmo recently, Belal Muhammad made that same argument. Not only that, the welterweight champ proposed fighting his rival Strickland in the interim. Sean definitely doesn't deserve a middleweight title fight. I think he needs one more win, so let's try to give it to him. Dana, come on, sign us up. I would think the winner of Khamzat and Whittaker, right? They're both riding high right now, and I think the winner of that fight makes the most sense. Strickland didn't really look good with 155 teep kicks his last fight. He said he earned it. You didn't really earn it. Whittaker's working his way back up, and he's fighting Khamzat. He beat Kamaru Usman, and he took that fight on a couple days' notice. Switch up opponents. That's always hard. Now, Strickland's head coach Eric Nixick recently told FTS MMA that the UFC has informed them that the former champion is getting a shot at the title. But he also acknowledged that Bobby Knuckles could leap past Strickland if he scores a big win at UFC 308, especially since the middleweight title fight is expected to go down in Australia.
Yeah, we heard we're next. So that's from Dana. I know Hunter said that. Sean had met with Hunter, and he said we're next. We're just waiting on a timeline that Dricus is going to be available. So we're waiting on Dricus. That's the nice thing, is that his coach, Dricus, none of these guys get to call that shot. It's the promotion.
Yeah.
So, can Rob leapfrog because it's in Sydney? Yeah, absolutely. Rob goes out, has a great performance against Khamzat. Can he leapfrog Sean and take that fight because it is in his home country, yeah, absolutely he can. But, from what the promotion has said, that Sean is next, and, that's all we can do. We can take them for the word, and have they changed their mind on certain things? Sure have, but we got to make sure we're ready when that opportunity comes.
More recently, however, Strickland reported that the UFC is actually looking at having him fight DDP at UFC 311 in Los Angeles. No date yet, but it should be in Jan, in LA. America is why the UFC exists. We should fight in the land of the free. Vegas, California, I don't care. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. What do you think? If Whittaker does drop jaws at UFC 308 and hands Khamzat his first pro defeat, do you think the UFC will still go ahead with DDP versus Strickland in Australia? UFC updates. Okay, let's move to UFC Fight Updates. And with 2024 winding down, more and more fights are being booked for the promotion schedule in early 2025. Case in point, recently MMA Fighting reported that the UFC's January 11th card will feature a compelling middleweight scrap between Chris Curtis and Roman Kopylov. And according to a report from Leo Guimaraes, 1 week later at UFC 311 on January 18th, Gelton Almeida will take on fellow heavyweight contender Sergey Spivak. FRM is also reporting a new matchup for UFC 311, as according to the outlet, undefeated bantamweight Rinya Nakamura will battle Muin Gafarov. But matchmakers are still rounding out the cards for the remainder of 2024, as Billy Quarantillo recently reported he's going to throw hands with the legendary Cub Swanson December 14th. And Team Iridium recently announced that Cortavius Romius will take on Gaston Bolaños in a bantamweight scrap at UFC Vegas 100 November 9th. In addition, Team Iridium has also reported that Olban Elliott will throw down with welterweight Basile Hafez at UFC 309, November 16th. What's next for Alex Pereira after UFC 307 win? Alex Pereira was tested and floored by Khalil Rountree Jr. at UFC 307, but the light heavyweight champ came roaring back to score a memorable stoppage and in the process extended the Poatan era. As many expected would be the case, Rountree Jr. was quicker than the fierce slugger and threatened Pereira with shots from the get-go. Pereira kept coming forward, and although at one juncture he was the victim of a flash knockdown, his pursuit of the challenger continued. As the fight wore on, Pereira bruised and bloodied Rountree with shots. In round 4, the Galaxy-class striker finally finished the fight with a thumping body shot. So now, the big question is, what's next for the ridiculously decorated fighter? Well, when Joe Rogan asked him that question after the win, Poatan relayed he doesn't want to stand in the way of his teammate Sean Strickland and his pursuit of Dricus du Plessis. So Pereira plans to continue fighting at light heavyweight. One would think that if Magomed Ankalaev defeats Alexander Rakic at UFC 308 later this month, he'll be next for Pereira. Ankalaev reacted to Pereira's win at UFC 307 by saying, "Congratulations both guys, it was a great fight. I'm glad Wudu guy won, and now I have to do my job, beat Rakic, and after that, kill the spill." Dana White fired back at the MMA community for the Pereira versus Rountree matchmaking.
Did this not play out the way everybody thought it would? I mean, everybody knew, everybody at first was like, oh, he's ranked number 8. But you knew it was going to be a bad fight. You knew it was going to be a bad fight. You can never measure heart. You don't know how that's going to go. Huh? Now you know.
Alex revealed during the post-fight press conference that he came into this fight camp with injuries and an illness. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, the fight was really tough, but only my team really knows how tough this camp was. I went through a lot of stuff that nobody really knows about. So I was in Brazil about over a month ago. I had some problems with my visa. I was going over to the consulate every single day trying to see if my passport was ready to be picked up. Finally made it back to the U.S. Spent about a week in Connecticut. Been here for 3 weeks. In that meantime, I was on antibiotics. I had a fever. I had a bad throat.
I don't think somebody else will have fight on those conditions. He have no camp, bro. He came here to adapt to the altitude and at the same time have his camp. So it was basically a 3-week camp, very sick, ribs are bad. He didn't want to go to the ground. Because of those conditions, he didn't know if the rib was going to pop for real or not.
As far as Rountree, the loss snaps his 5-fight winning streak, but it's pretty certain he'll face a top 10 ranked contender next. Key reason being, his stock only went up at UFC 307, despite taking a loss.